Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Kitchings Table here on Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP, Roku, GPAC 23 are two of the platforms. Of course, you can always find us on Facebook Live and YouTube. We'd like to thank the staff and management of Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, and all the people who tune in every Tuesday morning to our show. We hope that we bring something enlightening to you and something of interest, something that you can share with someone else in your community, your family, your friends, something that is thought-provoking, because each and every day something happens that should give us a reason to pause and ask a question. So today, in light of the sad situation that has happened in Uvalde, Texas, I'd like to offer my, again, condolences to the families in Uvalde for the loss of their children and their loved ones. We just hope that that community can heal itself from this tragedy. Same goes out to the people in Buffalo, New York, in any other community in the United States where domestic or mass violence from weapons of destruction are taking the lives of innocent individuals, especially children. Our show topic today is gun madness. Gun madness. Because when I heard recently about a young man who was shot here in my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, 5 hours after he graduated from high school. Ironically, it was my high school, but 5 hours after he graduated, he was in the morgue. He was dead. 5 hours. He will never have an opportunity to celebrate a class reunion, see his classmates again, see his family. That's all gone, taken away from him over senseless violence. And at the time, my question that I posed to classmates and anyone else who may have been looking at an email or something on Facebook was, when will the madness stop? When will the madness stop? When will it be time out for resolving issues and problems, situations, as men and women of common sense and who can resolve matters in a peaceful way? Why is a generation so bent on resolving issues and problems with violence, the taking of a life? The life of an individual has become so, in some instances, so worthless. It is not valued. It is devalued. It is easier to just take a person out, not understanding the fallout from what happens to the family, the friends, the community when such situations happen. So we have a situation in Uvalde, Texas, where an 18-year-old went into an elementary school and shot up a school. So I have a couple of questions to pose before I get into our conversation this morning. And the first question is this: if man was obsessed with creating a positive society, if man was obsessed with it, going to do everything possible to make everything in society positive and good, do the things that will help benefit society in so many positive ways, if that was the only thing they focused on, concentrated on, from the environment to health to poverty to whatever you want to call it, whatever need there is, if the focus was to just improve the quality of life for man throughout the world, If man was obsessed with that as much as man seems to be obsessed with destructive actions, creating a destructive society, where would humanity be if man was more focused on a positive, obsessed with doing all the positive things? There's enough time, energy, talents, work to create and build so much positiveness in those countries, third world countries, where they need clean water and roads and crops, things to help make those societies better. If man was focused on that, as opposed to greed, money, and destruction, where would humanity be? Because we don't seem to, many of us care about humanity. But as normal or as usual, that small portion of humanity seems to only care about money and destruction. Destruction and money. Money coming from the destruction, the taking away of lives, the turning over of communities. There's money to be made from doing such things. But how much more money could be made if we just turned all that energy into doing positive things each and every day? How much more could be made? Well, that question probably will be a lifelong question for society, humanity to answer, because it doesn't seem to be going away. And then my second question is, why is gun violence so prevalent only in America? Why is gun violence so prevalent only in America? Seldom hear about mass shootings in other countries. Is it because these countries have a higher tolerance for gun control, minimizing the opportunities for people to own weapons of destruction than America? We're going to get into some of the facts surrounding the gun industry in our pantry section of our show today, because it may just blow you away. Excuse the pun. The things that the gun industry and those companies who make a profit off weapons of destruction seem to take into account each and every day. So here's our show for today: Gun Madness. The day of the Wild Wild West dates back to over 100 years, during a time when the only way for there to be order or resolve an issue or situation was to use active gun force. The six-shooter, the pistol, that was the only way to resolve issues. If you had a beef with someone, you resolved it by shooting at one another. If someone stole your property, you resolved it with a gun. If someone was on your property, you resolved it with a gun. If someone threatened you, just verbally, you resolved it with a gun. During those days of the Wild Wild West, almost, and I must emphasize, almost every American owned a gun or rifle. Almost, not everyone. However, if you were economically challenged, and again, a lot of the problems that we have are stimulated or driven by economics. In a capitalistic society, the almighty dollar is at the top of the mountain. Economically challenged, your opportunity to own a new or gently used gun or rifle was not available. People who had money could buy guns, and more than one. People who did not have the resources could not. Either they had to have it given to them, or they had to steal it. Some kind of way they found a way to get a gun. When we think about joining the military, when you leave the military, you pretty much can, used to carry your weapons home. Seldom did the use of such force involve innocent children or people. When we look at things in the past, children were never part of that crime scene. There was always a reason to protect the children, the innocent. Also, in those days, it was okay to shoot first and explain later, especially if a person was committing a crime against another person's private property. Your horse, your cattle, water access, people grazing, having their animals graze on your land. Shoot first, talk later. You must also remember that the one era in American history that created the largest difference of economic wealth happened during the Industrial Revolution. So when the Industrial Revolution happened, when all these inventions were invented and produced and made to make life better, the quality of life better, those people who had economic power, who could be the manufacturers, who created companies to make things, they got rich or they got wealthy. That time when mechanized production of goods was operated by those who were fortunate to be inventors. And again, access to reading, writing, learning, education, that all played a part. So again, if those who were not in the mainstream, if those who were not part of the numbers for being included, you weren't going to have any rich or wealth in your family. Groups of individuals who saw a better way to produce volumes of products for the masses. These were the times that separated the rich from the wealthy. And if you were at the lowest rung on the pole, it didn't matter. You were just a victim. You're just a victim. So think about the way things were during this Industrial Revolution from 1870 till now. Mechanization created ways to make some individuals richer or rich. The country grew. You had to feed the country, and doing it one farm at a time just was not going to work. You had to grow in mass. Everything became massive. You had to do things in large numbers, bulk. And in order to do that, you had to have mechanized machinery to produce it, get it to the marketplace for those to purchase. The Industrial Revolution, probably the greatest era in American history that caused a divide between the poor, the rich, and the wealthy. So let's fast forward 100 years. Let's fast forward from 1870 to 1970 till 2021, 22. Some instances, only the year have changed. Some things have gotten better. Some things have gotten much better. Some things seem to have gotten stuck in that revolving cycle, that vicious cycle of only making those who have the wherewithal, the opportunity, the resources, they can get out of the vicious cycle and do better. But those who are stuck, life did not get better for them. So we talk about gun madness. The fact that weapons, guns, or other forms of violence are used without care for human life, and it is an everyday part of this society in the 21st century. And the end results are more devastation and more destruction. More devastation, more destruction. And again, I go back to my first question. If man focused on positiveness, doing things that could help all mankind be better, you don't have time to worry about building weapons of destruction, building bombs, looking at movies where they highlight the wars that the world has been involved with, the senseless killing of a war, the senseless killing of a war to resolve an issue. And sometimes destruction and violence must be met with destruction and violence in order for goodness to come out of it. Sometimes, not all the time. In the past 30 years, the amount of violence against human beings and innocent children is staggering. And the fact that those individuals who prefer to have economic gains from the sale of weapons of human destruction continues to drive the lack of a desire to clean up the problem. If there was no money to be made from the manufacturing and the selling of weapons of destruction, where would the economic outcome be? See, if there was not the type of money being made from the gun industry, there would not be as many manufacturers. It may not be the industry that we know it today. A $28 billion industry. $28 billion. That's what the gun industry is projected as producing, taking in every year. And granted, a good majority of that is for the military, to protect and secure our borders, to protect us from criminals who want to impose their will against those who cannot maybe defend for themselves or who have the power to protect themselves. So it's a constant battle, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there's always someone who wants to take what someone else has. I want more. I got to have more. I want to control more. I want to be in charge of more. I want to oversee and run your life. That's why I asked the question, if man was concerned about just doing what was good for all of humanity, if you think about the places in the world that if we did more for humanity, you wouldn't have people trying to rush to America and cross our borders to live here if there was a better way of life in Central America, where a lot of people are coming from, or South America or Europe, wherever, Africa, wherever they're coming from. If the way of life was better in their home countries, home continents, there would be no need to want to rush here because everyone has the same thing, but that's not the case. So the weapons of destruction play a role in the economic prowess of what's going on. It's one thing to take out destruction and the creation of carnage on adults, but when we do it to our children, what does that say about a society that's supposed to be so civilized? Civilized. That's another good thing to ask. How civilized are we? Then you ask who in power has the courage to say enough of this destruction and violence, enough of making all these weapons, enough of having all these guns and rifles. And then where and when will the line be drawn to say you've gone too far? Too many weapons, too much ammunition. I mean, when is too far? Where is that line? Too far seems not to be far enough. No matter how many times we have these mass shootings and killings, and we have the pouring out of gun control, and we need to do better, we need to change things, that issue is like a snail, prodding and trogging along at snail's pace. And I would say this, it all goes back to economics. Because if there was not the kind of money being made, $28 billion a year, by the gun industry, would we really have that big of a gun problem? So we keep adding to the list of cities and places that see mass destruction. A person taking a weapon, a military style weapon, a weapon that was supposed to just use a single shot, and mechanizing it so it can shoot rapidly and repeatedly. What is their reasoning? What is their why? Are they that challenged? Are they that off center? Are they that lack of caring? Are they that disturbed? So the newest names to be added to the ongoing list of places where human devastation has changed the lives of thousands of families. Again, seek answers from the people, the voters, the entities who voted for government officials to find the solutions. And I'm going to preference that word, not solutions, not solutions, solutions, solutions. Because see, the souls of individuals who get caught up in this carnage, the souls of the individuals who must deal with living without their children, not waking up to that child, not being with that child any further, not being with that loved one any further. Those solutions are slow in coming. Why? When such devastation just tears at the heart and soul of a community, why are the solutions always taking so long? So we talk about the $28 billion a year gun industry, and then on the horizon is a new industry that the government must now face and other governments must now take into account. And that's the manufacturing of 3D guns. No serial numbers, no way to trace them, no nothing. Man creates a machine to create a 3D item product. But of course, someone has the idea of creating something destructive, something negative, something that can benefit those who want to, as we would say, and excuse me for saying, but cheat. You want to cheat people out of life, children out of life. You've cheated these children out of an opportunity to grow up and be productive citizens because you're unhappy with your life, yourself, the way things are. You don't know how to resolve a situation other than taking someone else's life, and then become a coward when you take your own life after you've killed, multiple people. You're a coward. You don't want to face up to the music. You don't want to face up to authorities. You take your own life. You may not know it. But there are 20 gun manufacturing brands in the world. 20. So on an average, that would almost be about $1 billion per manufacturer that they make every year. But it's more than that for some, less for others. But 20 gun manufacturing brands. Think about that. 20 companies that make weapons day in and day out, ammunition day in and day out for our military, for our law enforcement agencies, security agencies. It's a cycle. Here are the top 5 names that I found on the internet. Smith & Wesson was at the top, followed by Remington, Glock, Heckler & Koch, and Mossberg. The first 2 date back to the Wild Wild West days. Glock has become a preferred weapon of law enforcement, and the other 2 weapons, long rifles, military rifles. So we continue to have a situation where it's okay. You can buy as many weapons as you can afford. You can buy all these military type weapons that shoot multiple rounds, like with the AR-15, 400 rounds a minute, or even 400 rounds in less time, and the devastation and destruction of the ammunition that come out these weapons. I did some additional looking into what we put in these weapons, and they're all ammunition, i.e. bullets, and a bullet, depending on the size of the weapon, has a caliber. And the word caliber refers to the size of the diameter of the barrel of a weapon. So we start at a 22, which is a very small barrel. We go up to a 50 caliber, which is a very large barrel of a weapon. And when we talk about these AR-15s, the barrel diameters get larger, which means you can put in a larger bullet, which when you look at the size and the shape of the ammunition they put in these weapons, they have more gunpowder in the bullet, and the bullet itself, and a bullet is the projectile at the end. That's what a bullet is, the projectile at the end. So you have the cartridge where the gunpowder is, and at the end of that you have the bullet. So when it's discharged, that bullet goes out. Some are blunt ended, but when we get to these large caliber rifles of destruction, they're pointed and they pierce. And when it's going through flesh and bone, it's ripping, tearing, and just creating havoc. But yet we're okay with this, I guess. I guess we're okay with it. So when, again, does the madness stop? So Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York, South Florida, Connecticut, Las Vegas, and many other cities in between have seen devastation of humankind. But again, destruction at schools where children believe there's security and safety there. But somebody wants to just come in and disrupt that community, that calm, that peaceful place. It's become common day almost. Even shooting up churches. 2018, a synagogue in Pittsburgh was shot up. 11 were killed. And in a recent TV program, an FBI agent took a look at the devastation of the carnage at that church. And he indicated that a lot of bodies, you couldn't recognize the individuals because of the destruction that the bullets made on people's lives. I mean, it's one thing for one bullet to pierce, but when there's multiple bullets piercing and ripping and shredding, It's just unbelievable. He mentioned that 90% of the people in the church were unrecognizable. And since 2000, gun production has tripled, primarily because of the purchase of handguns. And individuals like to say, well, I bought it for protection. I get that. And, the Second Amendment is being peppered all the time, where people are always pushing that envelope. Well, I have the right to bear arms. And again, the Second Amendment goes back to a day when bearing arms was when this country was in its startup years, when people lived in the wilderness. But the bearing of arms, do you need 30 weapons? Do you need 15 rifles and 15 handguns just for the sake of having them? Do you really need that many? I read an article where a guy who was into weaponry had an AR-15, but after the senseless killing in Uvalde, Texas, he had an AR-15 weapon. He enjoyed that rifle. He loved it. But after the senseless killing in Uvalde, Texas, this American citizen made a conscientious effort, pulled out his AR-15 and turned it in to the police. He said he was just done. I'm just done with it. Weapons of destruction. The amount of weaponry that police find every year is just unimaginable. And the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives track a lot of this. And in a statistical study, the police recovered 19,344 privately manufactured firearm untraceable homemade weapons known as ghost guns in 2021. Almost 20,000 untraceable weapons, a tenfold increase since 2016. The production of weapons is on the rise. 3.9 million in 2000, 11.3 in 2020. America has a fetish for weapons, guns, things that create destruction. This is the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, every Tuesday morning here on Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. Here on the Kitchings Table, we make a very valiant attempt to bring you information, newsworthy information, sometimes fun information too, to give you reason to pause and think. And today is a great day to pause, reflect, and think. Pray for the community of Uvalde, Texas, Buffalo, New York. Continue to pray for all the other communities that have had destruction ripped through it and turned the community inside out, upside down. Pray for the days ahead, because it is not over. There will be more. There will be others. And until America devalues the economic wealth from the manufacturing of guns and rifles, when that is put under control, it may become better. For a factual part of what we're talking about, please note that in Texas, the young man who did the destruction in Texas, did you know that in Texas, a person has the right at 18 years old to buy an AR-15? Can't buy cigarettes or beer or a liquor or alcohol. Can't buy those things. Got to have a license to drive an automobile, a controlled vehicle, of a controlled weapon, or product of destruction if used the wrong way. Have to have a license to drive a car, truck, motorcycle, boat, plane. Got to have a license. Got to be ID to buy cigarettes and alcohol. But at 18 in the state of Texas, you have the right, if you can afford it, to buy whatever kind of weapon you choose to. And this 18-year-old young man bought 2 AR-15s. So in our pantry section today, we're going to talk about the AR-15 and some manufacturing aspects of the gun industry. And hopefully it gives you reason to pause. So the AR-15, the chosen weapon for those who desire to perpetuate mass destruction on humanity. Once again, it's against the law in most states, in Texas, to buy cigarettes or alcohol if you're 18 years old, but you can buy an AR-15. Got to pass a test to drive a motor vehicle. No test needed to get a weapon of destruction. What's the point? I mean, that in a nutshell surmises where we are as a country. You got to have a license to drive a car. You got to take classes to learn how to operate a vehicle. Not necessary to shoot a weapon. Not necessary to purchase a weapon. If you got the money, I got the product. Hand over the money, I'll hand over the gun. I'll hand over the rifle. Forget the background checks and all of that, because obviously, even with that in effect, it doesn't matter. If an 18-year-old can just go to a store and buy 2 AR-15s. And understand this, that the average price of an AR-15 is about $800, up to $1,200. In some instances, you can get a long automatic long rifle like an AR-15 almost at $2,000. So if you can go buy a weapon, save up your money and go buy a weapon because you want to hurt someone, you want to injure someone, you got it in your head that things are being taken away from you, that you're losing control of life as you know it. Things are being taken away from you. So you're going to do something about it. You don't need a license. Then we talk about the access. And access to weapons on a regular basis is done by what they call gun shows. And in a lot of communities, month in, month out, week in, week out, there's a gun show going on somewhere. So the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms maintains no historical record as to the number of gun shows that occur. They estimate 2,000 gun shows are held every year in America. But the National Association of Arms, their numbers are different. They predict, guesstimate, estimate, whatever you want to call it, 5,200 gun shows every year. Let me give you the definition as to how the government defines gun shows. Gun shows are defined in the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations as functions sponsored by any national, state, or local organization devoted to the collection, competitive use, or other sporting use of firearms, or an organization or association that sponsors functions devoted to the collection, competitive use, or other sporting arm use of firearms in the community. It goes on to say that the single most prominent commercial promoter of gun shows in America is a Utah-based company or organization promoter called Crossroads of the West Gun Shows. Crossroads of the West Gun Shows. They put on nearly 50 shows in 5 Western states in 2009. 500,000 tickets were said to be shown in 2006. Founding owner Bob Templeton is also the president of the National Association of Arms Shows, the industry's trade group. It is a family enterprise. And Templeton runs this with his wife and his daughter Tracy, who work at processing background gun checks. So what? Then we get into, you got that going on, gun shows. So let me give you a breakdown of gun shows by the states that do it more frequently and have more of them. Topping us off, Texas, 245 gun shows a year. Followed by Florida, 142 gun shows a year. Ohio, 120 gun shows a year. Pennsylvania, 126 gun shows a year. Wisconsin, 104 gun shows a year. This was a table, and it lists all the gun shows. And most states have a gun show. The state with the fewest gun shows, Delaware, 1. Hawaii, 2. Maine, 4. North Dakota, 5. But if I was to just look at by region, west, south, north, east, where would you guess most of the gun shows occur? You got it. Most of the gun shows occur in the South. Alabama 37, Florida 142, Georgia 63, Kentucky 36, Louisiana 50, Mississippi 30, North Carolina 82, South Carolina 29, Tennessee 61, Texas 245, Virginia 83. It's probably a third. And the beats and the hits just keep on coming. So the manufacturers continue to make these weapons of destruction. Some gun places, some gun stores, some gun department stores are starting to cut back on selling weapons and ammunition, Walmart being one of them. But it's all about economics. So I want to just emphasize the AR-15 because this was the gun that did the destruction of Uvalde, Texas, the school, the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. And they'll be sorting through the reason this happened without intervention by law enforcement in a timely fashion for a while. Folks are going to be angry and upset, but 245 gun shows in Texas. What do you expect? 245 gun shows. When you got 12 months in a year, That's like 20 gun shows a month in Texas. They believe in their guns in Texas. That's all you can say. They believe in it. They must have it. I must have a gun. I must have a weapon. I must have something. I got to protect myself and my family and my property. True. But when it flips to mass killings, what is that reasoning? So the AR-15, the weapon of choice, because as I heard, I guess maybe on a radio or TV show, wild animals that people shoot at for pleasure, for game, ducks, deer, animals like that, they don't wear Kevlar vests to protect themselves. And you certainly won't shoot a deer with an AR-15 because the carnage is like you shred up all the meat. So there's nothing, you try to make pulled deer meat before you get it home to shred it yourself is worthless. So if not for the use to hunt game, wild game in the wild, what game are we looking to hunt? Human game? The AR-15, manufactured by the Daniel Defense Company, said that this weapon that this young man bought was a Daniel Defense DD M4 V7 rifle, which cost about $1,800 plus, a semi-automatic rifle. And ironically, there was the National Rifle Association held its annual convention in Houston, Texas, this past weekend showcasing 14 acres of guns and gear from popular companies that featured Daniel Defense. That's the name of the company that makes the AR-15. And Daniel Defense is located in Black Creek, Georgia, sells the AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and accessories online. It ships weapons to registered dealers who then finish the purchase if the customer is 18 years old or older and passes a background check. What if it's a black market? This company was started in 2001, and it was started and got a government contract in 2002 for $20 million. That's how it got started. And that's how it started the process of creating this weapon. Now, we know that wars and battles and things of this conflicts don't happen very often. It takes some time and some energy. And we've gone to battle. We got out of a 20-year war. We've been in a large-scale war, many wars, and weapons of destruction are used in wars. But now weapons of destruction are used in mass shootings. It is the weapon of choice. Why must we have this type of weaponry available to the general public? I don't recall any foreign country ever invading America. But yet we make enough weapons as if someone is threatening us on a regular basis. Our borders are north is Canada, south is Mexico. That's it. It's not like countries. It's not like the Ukraine. It's not like Europe. So we have all this weaponry to protect ourselves and for game. But again, why is it that America is the only country in the world where mass shootings seem to be the norm, where murdering and killing people with weapons like this seem to be okay? It's okay to have 5 of these semi-automatic weapons in your entourage. It's okay for you to have 5 or 10 pistols. Yeah, you use the disguise of gun collector, but is that just a way for you to have weapons so that you can use them at your pleasure, your leisure? You know, people who live in rural communities, you know, how often are they attacked? You know, and why are schools targeted? Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School down in South Florida, Robb Elementary in Texas, Sandy Hook. Why are schools targeted? What is the point? We seem to value money and weapons more than we value human life. Again, the question is, when will the madness stop? When will man be more concerned about the betterment of mankind as they are to the destructiveness of mankind? When will it stop? Is this the straw that will semi-break the camel's back in gun control in the United States of America? Perhaps. But then again, the conversation continues in our Congress, in our state legislatures, in our businesses. It's all about the economics of guns and weapons. Who can stop it? I don't think people want to stop it. So until things change, we just wait as a ticking time bomb goes on until the next mass shooting. And then we review the same old question over again. When will we put more emphasis on gun control? When? I'm Earl Kitchings. Every Tuesday morning, you can catch me with my ideas, thoughts, and suggestions here on the Kitchings Table, heard every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on WBISLP 106.9 FM. Awesome show. YouTube, if you miss us, catch us on YouTube. If you didn't see us, catch us on Facebook Live. If you didn't hear us, Roku, and GPAC 23. But until next week, I'm gonna say so long. Until then, have a great week. Keep praying for America. Take care.